What I want to do as part of this exercise is just a couple of things, really just give you an overview of the fund and what it does and what it aims to do. Review the guidance for applicants, you've all got that, but if there's any questions about it, then there is the opportunity to ask questions about it, and then obviously we'll take your questions at the end. We'll also end with a couple of projects just highlighting a couple of projects that have already received funding, and it might be worth you having a look at some of those just to give some understanding and feel about what's been through the process so far and what panels have considered previously, but actually have felt worthwhile and valuable to take forward. So that's what we aim to cover today. We're here till 11. If we're finished before that, fine. We don't need to use all the time if we don't need to. So hopefully you've seen the guidance, but I am going to just go through some of the guidance and the programme itself. The Innovation Fund itself is a programme that's funded by both Bromley Council and South East London CCG. Is part of the Bromley Well contract, and it's part of a commitment to transformation, learning and progress, and it's partly to support small and community focused projects which benefit Bromley residents and meet the local priorities, and the aim of the fund is just to really think about what works and to explore different and effective ways of improving access and different ways that we can support local residents. And part of that is just thinking about some of the services, some of the gaps, and where the associate members can effectively add value to the services and the pathways that are currently delivered through the Bromley Well contract. So it could be about thinking about alternative ways of working or tackling some of the problems that are ingrained. It could be just thinking about innovation, quality and the speed of services expected. And I think the last year's really all been for everybody, I think, about innovation. And I think 18 months, 24 months ago, I don't think anybody had heard Zoom, and now here we are, and we're hosting conferences, we're hosting events, and none of this would have happened, and many of our service users and beneficiaries would have been excluded. And it's about testing testing solutions to some of the emerging problems. Just in terms of the additional guidance, obviously during the pandemic, a number of challenges have arisen. And so the guidance for the current year 2021-22 obviously reflects on that and looks at what the issues that have emerged, and there's a list of them there. It is about reducing social isolation and loneliness, helping people improve their health and well-being, supporting carers, promoting volunteering, and providing day opportunities for vulnerable adults and older people. And I think all those things have been very high up on everybody's agenda during the last 24 months, no doubt for many people continue, and so you do need to think about some of those issues because they are current priorities. Just in terms of the eligibility, and it does sound from that brief introduction that everybody is currently eligible. You have to be based or operating in the borough and provide services for the benefits of residents. it is about supporting the most vulnerable members of Bromley's community. You do need to be an associate member of the BTSC partnership, so I'll talk a bit about that. And then organisations may only apply once. So whether you've got a previous application, if it's been in this year, you're not, priority will be given to applications for those who've not previously received innovation funding. So if you have applied within the year, then you may have to wait till the bid round next year, and it may be that there's going to be another bid round in 22, 23. So hopefully the session and the opportunity won't be lost. Just in terms of the associate membership of the partnership, it is a criteria now, a means, and obviously associate membership is important. It's important not just because it enables access to the fund, but it does enable access to some support services as well, and it does also enable you and help embed some of your services. There's about 60 plus members of the current partnership, and that membership continues to grow. On the application form, on the guidance document, there is a footnote that says how to join. And Sue's on here, and I think Kerry, it's definitely worth talking to Sue if you haven't talked to Sue beforehand. The application process is a relatively straightforward process. The form isn't a cumbersome form. It is about supporting organisations that support people and encourage to address their health and well-being. The applications are then submitted to the board, and I sit on the board, and they're circulated, and generally they go through reasonably speedily. The main issues generally tend to be around safeguarding and policies, and so if you've got your policy suite in place, then actually you should be fine. So get that in. It's a very smooth process, and if you've got time to complete the application form, then you should be able to complete that. And Sue's very helpfully added her contact details there in the chat, so thank you, Sue. So that's the eligibility criteria. How much is available to apply for? Available funds are 80,000. Applications can be up to 50,000. Now, obviously, there's 6 organisations on here. We're recording it. There's a number of organisations who'd like to have been here today and couldn't be here. So obviously, we can anticipate demand. Because we manage the portal, we can see who's expressed an interest and is registered. I can say one organisation has already, who aren't on the call, have already submitted. So there is interest in it. So obviously we can't all award, you won't all be awarded 50,000. So I think be realistic, and when we show some of the applications a bit later on, it will give you a sense of how much has been distributed. 50,000 obviously tends to be at the top end rather than the bottom end, and some of the awards have been considerably smaller. The other thing you need to be mindful of is the end date of the projects must exceed 30th of September. So and all bids will be subject to periodic review and monitoring. So the important thing about that is, in order to be able to deliver within that time frame, projects will be expected to start as soon as possible. So if you've got a long mobilisation period, there's clearly a risk you're not going to be able to deliver. So you do need to think about that. Because it's one of the things that in the criteria that the panels and the board will actually be looking at. The application form, I hope, is reasonably straightforward. What I will try and do is just elaborate on some of the underpinning elements that appear within the form. So what we want is a description of the service and how it will deliver. So, for example, it could be that, I don't know, you're from a football club and you want to work with some young people who've been subject to lockdown, that they're experiencing social isolation. So it needs to be some sort of narrative about what you want to deliver, how you want to deliver it, and to whom, and how you've identified some of those needs. How will it improve service delivery? So what are the outcomes? And we'll come to outcomes a bit. Will it add economic and social value? And one of the pieces where the CLB have previously been funded for through the Innovation Fund, again, is around social value. And we are doing a piece of work at the moment as part of another fund, Cornerstone Funding. So if you need advice on social and economic value, we're more than happy to give you that. And there are some training programs associated with that. Some of those work streams, but you need to think about, your volunteering offer, who you employ, how you recruit, how you engage with people. How will your service incorporate user feedback and professional experience? And finally, you need to think about your evaluation framework and some of the measures by which you're going to evaluate your programs. So just in terms of that, I just wanted to sort of expand slightly on some of those. So just in terms of the outcomes, you do, as I say, need to focus on at least one of the outcomes from the service specification. So that's that section in part 3. So are you addressing social isolation? What are you trying to achieve as part of it? There's also a reference to the pathways and pathways on the application form about pathways with the requirement to have a clear alignment with the Bromley Well contract and its key performance indicators. And as a board member, I think I appreciate and understand that may be quite difficult if you're outside and you won't necessarily know what the range of performance indicators are. But there are 6 overarching themes and outcomes that you maybe want to think about. Can your project help reduce the requirement for unplanned care resulting in emergency admissions? Can you help prevent and delay the requirement for long-term care packages? And some of the contributions we've already had, I think it's clear that many of you are doing that. It's about supporting service users to remain independent in their community so that they don't necessarily need to go into residential care, so they don't necessarily need support of social services and the statutory services. It's about building capacity and capabilities within the communities. So, for example, Debbie's project really does seek to address that. It is about building capacity within community. It is about building capabilities. And one of the things that's clearly come out of the pandemic is the community champions programs across South East London have been quite interesting because they've clearly played an important part as community messengers, spreading the word about the virus, the impact of the virus, the importance of vaccination, as well as sharing and spreading community messages into some of the harder to reach communities. It's also about can we leverage in further external funding, and we'll talk perhaps a bit about that at the end. And can the project help shape local services to facilitate benefit and therefore added value? And the final thing is about evidence of co-production. And I think co-production is a bit of a jargon word. But in essence, I think here it's about two things, really. It's about have you engaged with your service users? What are your service users telling them? Are the service users involved in the assessment and evaluation of your current work? How are they going to be involved in the delivery? How are they going to be involved in the evaluation and the monitoring? So you need to think about it in that context, but you also need to think about it is how does it relate to the current pathways of Bromley Well? How does it relate to some of the services that some of the Bromley Well partners deliver? And for those of you who aren't familiar with all the partners, they're essentially the direct core deliveries are Bromley, Lewisham and Greenwich Mines, Age UK, Citizens Advice, and Bromley Mencap. So I think those players really give you a sense in terms of what the contract is about and how the contract is being delivered. So they will be looking about actually, do you add value to the services that they provide? Is it additional, or is it indeed duplicating the services that are currently being provided under that contract? So think about that. If you're clearly not sure about that, then by all means, you might want to talk to Sue, you might want to talk to Brenda or myself in terms of that, and you may look at Bromley Well's website as well. In terms of capacity, just think about what a strong bid looks like. So a strong bid, it's about what resources do you need to deliver the initiative. Volunteers are quite often referenced in applications. Okay, how many volunteers? How are you going to recruit them? What support do you need? How are they going to be supervised? You need to think about those things. You need to identify the risks in terms of carrying out the project and ways of mitigating those risks. So if you're going to be recruiting staff, are you going to be able to recruit? What are the consequences if you can't? What's your plan B in that scenario? How stable is it? If it's a new project, have you got the capacity to run it? We obviously see lots of bids from organisations that are comparatively new, that want to recruit whole teams. They often don't necessarily have lots of experience or demonstrable experience of delivering that, and that clearly becomes a challenge for a panel looking at that. So be realistic. Think about what's achievable and try to present a coherent timeline in terms of your project, because with lots of these things, I think we all, and I include myself in that, tend to be slightly over ambitious in terms of what we can deliver when, and the timetables do seem to take far longer than we actually initially suggest or propose. The next thing is just thinking about your impact. And there's three criteria for a strong bid in relation to impact. So will it deliver a significant improvement for service users as outlined in the specification? I think that's quite difficult, and that can be challenging. So has similar projects been run in other areas? And if so, is there demonstrable impact there? And actually, how will you know it's achieved that impact? I think the other thing about that is it can be quite challenging if you're innovative. If it's a new proposal, you don't necessarily know in advance, and that is about the expectation. So is there any research to back up your proposal? Is there any evidence from other areas? And lots of this is about learning from delivery in other areas. I was at Bromley Mines AGM last night, and lots of that was around transformation and establishment of community hubs, and lots of the model that is being embedded and rolled out is actually a model that's actually been used quite extensively in Lewisham. So there is a history and a track record and understanding of what works, what doesn't work, what the challenge is, but what are the resulting benefits. So think about how you can evidence that. You need to think about actually what's not currently delivered by Bromley Well, and indeed other contracts held by the council. Clearly, if you may not know about services, but certainly talk to Sue, talk to myself, talk to Maya, certainly about some of the other contracts and other services that the council support and provide through other funds and other work streams. If the fund is to be used to target groups and areas, what's the justification for that? So are you delivering a Bromley-wide service, or are you actually going to earmark a specific area? And there are clearly benefits in terms of targeting resources in certain areas. One of the issues that's clearly come out of the pandemic is health inequalities, issues around access to food, issues around digital exclusion, the impacts that's had, but certainly it's not universal, and those issues don't necessarily exist across all parts of the borough, but nonetheless they're quite heavy and embedded in certain areas. So do you want to target a specific area? Do you want to target a specific group, and actually pilot a piece of work and look at impacts for a project that you may want to grow over time? And finally, I want to just highlight some of the previous successes. We will share these slides, and I will make sure that you get access to all these slides. At the bottom of that, you can see a link to the BTSC blog, and the blog has a number of illustrations and a number of examples of projects. So the three examples there that are highlighted there are an advocacy training program, a partnership in action helping survivors of domestic abuse support their well-being, and a Home Start project. And just to give you a feel, the Home Start project is funding to support to start a new support group. It's starting in this autumn. The group specifically for mothers who've experienced domestic abuse in different ways and require support moving forward. It's an 8-week program, so it's obviously time limited, an hour and a half each week, and it's led by an experienced counsellor. It's also worth having a look at the advocacy training program, because that's about cascading advocacy training across the borough to ensure that the skills, competencies and abilities are available to organisations as well as the local advocacy organisations. Interestingly, and just in terms of the merits of associate membership, that's initially targeted exclusively on to associate members, and there is a survey on there. I'm going to try and see if the link will work, and it'll take me to there. So if I may lose this screen, but I'm going to try and see if I can do it that way. Yep, here we go. So this is the BTSC website, and as you can see, there are.
So we can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it. I beg your pardon.
You can see the presentation.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Let's stop that share, and I will see if I can share it this way. Can you see it now?
Yes. Fantastic.
Thank you for that. So there's 3 of the projects that have been supported: Moving Beyond Abuse, the advocacy training people, and that's about how the innovation funds are used to develop advocacy skills across the borough, and also the final project about helping survivors of domestic abuse. Have a read of those blogs. I think they're really useful in terms of summarising and those projects. It includes what the projects are delivering, but also what the rationale for the projects are, and you clearly get some indication of the resource and the scale of the awards. So I think that's let's stop that share there. Let's see if I can go back to the slides. As I say, I will share these with you subsequently. Let's go back. Just finally, how to apply and some of the timescales. Applications need to be made online, creating the application form. The application form is on the Community Links portal. If you have any difficulties accessing it and or navigating your way around, please let us know. It's being used now. It was used for Direct Line Funding Programme. It was used for Big Local Mottingham. It's been used for the Day Centre Fund. So many of the community groups have used it. And to be fair, all the feedback on it has been very positive. But I appreciate that for some people it may present a challenge and people may not have the technology. If that is the case, please let us know. As I said, there's one application on there at the moment that's completed. The deadline for completion is at the 22nd of November, so you've got some time to work on this. Then, in terms of the process, what will happen is the BTSC board will be reviewing all the applications. The current intention is that takes place on the 25th. So the turnaround, the intention, the anticipation, the aspiration is that there is quite a fast turnaround in relation to this. So that's on the Wednesday. And then following that, assuming there's a fit with the Bromley Well service, the applications will then be forwarded to the Innovation Fund panel, and they may consult with appropriate officers within the council. But notwithstanding that, the intention in relation to that is for that to take place in the week the following Monday. I've said on there that the intention is to notify applications of the outcome within 2 weeks. It may be that we can do that sooner, but I've left it at 2 weeks because as I say, sometimes there can be some drag with this. But as you say, there will be notification fairly early on. If you're successful, great. You will be given a you will be provided with a decision letter, and that will include some conversation about the monitoring requirements, as well as the reporting requirements. Currently it's quarterly, and it's as well with case studies. The monitoring is proportionate, depending on how much money you get. It will obviously determine the level of detail that you need in terms of reporting requirements. But the reporting requirements are important, so you do need to think about actually how you're going to measure progress from the service users, and that will come from Bromley Well. The other thing I should say is that does mean some people won't be successful. I think what you do need to think about is actually, I will obviously see those. We will think about actually, are they, if it doesn't necessarily fit in, or there will be instances where actually we do really like the project, but actually we won't necessarily have the resources to support it, or we don't give you the resources that actually you probably need to deliver it. So we will be thinking about alternative sources of funding, and there will be other funding opportunities along the way. So we'll obviously endeavour to keep you posted in relation to those. Just as an aside, one of those that's just come out this week is the Bromley Community Foundation have a bid round that opened on Tuesday. So you might want to look at that, because some of the themes, some of the priorities are very similar. There is a cap on that, the availability of money there, but nonetheless, it's worthwhile having a look at that, because if you've got a small project, that's certainly another fund that does align very closely with themes in relation to this. So thank you for that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and now really is the opportunity to sort of for you to sort of ask any questions that's prompted, and just think about, and if you want to share how you think your project may make the requirements, or you may feel actually, having listened to it, it perhaps doesn't necessarily meet the requirements, and actually how we can support you to ensure that the bid you get reflects the services and the quality of the services that you want to present. So that's it from me at this stage. Is there any questions? No, that's good. Well, I can't see any hands going up. As I said at the outset, we don't need to. Well, I'm not going to keep you on here for 12 minutes staring at me. I'm sure you've all got more productive ways of using your time and morning. Sue's very helpfully added a comment around data collection and data sharing, and thinking about the evidence. Bromley Well do a huge amount of work in terms of evidencing the impacts, and in that might also be really helpful. So thank you for sharing that, Sue. And Sue's contact details are on the screen, and we'll make sure that everybody has that subsequently. Debbie's got a hand up. Can I ask Debbie to come in? Debbie.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Christopher. I think that presentation was really, really helpful. And, you know, going through the detail. One of the things you mentioned around eligibility was priority will be given to organisations that hadn't previously received funding. You also mentioned that if an organisation had applied in the last 12 months, they may only apply once. So if an organisation hadn't received funding but had applied in the last 12 months, would they still qualify to apply this time for this round?
I think, I mean, on the face of it, I mean, I would get the application in, to be honest. I think what we're keen to do is obviously commit the funding and the resource. But clearly within that priority, we will be looking at groups that obviously haven't received funding previously. So clearly they're going to be the priority. So we'll go back and check in terms of that, because clearly there's quite a significant amount of work that goes into a bid like that. You may also want to think about, actually, you know, if it applied before, of the circumstances changed as it developed, I mean, what's different now? So think about that. We will come back. I will check with the board as well as with the local authority in terms of whether we would encourage a bid at this stage in relation to that. So thank you for that. I think that's relevant and pertinent.
Thank you. Really helpful. Thanks again for the information.
I think the other thing is, Debbie, I think in the event that the answer is, well, probably not this round, there will be another round potentially next year. And the other thing we do need to think about is, let's have a conversation about what that proposal looks like, and actually, you know, where the funding opportunities may lie. As I said, there's also the Bromley Community Fund. It's a smaller fund, it's a smaller pot, but there is 50,000 there in total. Yeah. And we also anticipate there will be a rounds of grant funding that the CLB do separately, funded via the lottery, and that should be coming online fairly shortly. And there's up to 250,000 across 2 boroughs in relation to that. So there is other money in addition to this.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks.